Hi, this is Roger. Thanks for dropping by. The ones that came out, the pots, the emergency repots and the like, this is the sort of follow-up one as to what happened to them. This is the Tiny Twinkle, sort of cleaned up, a few old pseudo bulbs taken off. It naturally fell into two parts, mainly as I tried to tear one of the old pseudo bulbs off instead of getting the scissors. But the fact that it's in two parts is not a big deal. Both parts have new growths on, and hopefully it'll spread more over the mount by starting in two different places rather than one place. So I'm quite pleased with that. Got a little label on the back, and yeah, I've now got a multitude of choices as to where I can put that because it's on a mount. Okay, so that's one done. Okay, this is the Miltoniopsis. I've stopped cutting roots on the grounds that once you start aiming at old roots that you want to cut and you start hitting new roots, it's time to stop. The new roots are too precious, especially on something like this. Now, this is nearly two plants, and it may well have been two plants put in one pot. Some vendors cheat. They really do. I'm not mucking about. I've seen a beautiful orchid that when somebody took it out of their pot, it was 3 or 4 separate plants put in together, small plants, not blooming size. One of them had a spike, yeah? And they're all squashed up together to look like a single large plant. And then when you get them home, they're not. They cheat. Okay, different principle this time. See what you think. These like moisture, yeah, especially when they're actively growing. When they're pushing on well, these drink a fair bit and they like to stay moist. So I have missed a couple. I'm still trying to spot ones that I can just gently pull off without doing any damage. I don't want to leave too many dead ones in the pot, but I need enough for the plant to get a hold with something. And these do branch occasionally. They're more lots of roots single rather than a few roots highly branched. But right, so this pot is too big. So how do you make a pot that's too big smaller? Put more crocks in the bottom. Yeah, I mean, if the roots get down into that chunky bark, it's not the end of the world. New theory. The idea, when a plant needs to stay moist a bit longer than some others, you put some moss in. But a knowledgeable person told me, what is the point of going to the expense of getting the quality Orchiata bark that can last 3, 4, sometimes 5 years, depending on how wet it stays, and then breaking up sphagnum moss and mixing it in when that sphagnum moss is liable to break down in a year, causing a need for a repot. So this is getting no moss at all. I want it to stay in its pot undisturbed in a media that I know isn't going to break down. So all it's going to get is my fine bark. What do you think? I haven't tried this before. But that sounded like a good idea to me. It sounded like something I can work with because it sort of makes sense. You know, moss on a mount is sort of almost compulsory. Unless you want a bare root one on a mount, you're going to need something for it to grow into, and you can't tie bark on a mount. You can make a little net and put it in, but I don't go to those troubles. I like to keep things simple and cut the workload down. Yeah, that means I get more things done. So this is just going to get my smallest grade bark. It's the sort of thing I'd put a Paphiopedilum in. But then every time I've repotted a Paphiopedilum, I've always put moss in there as well. You know, oh, mustn't dry out, like to stay moist quite a lot longer, yeah? Well, and then the moss breaks down, and the last thing paphs need is acidic soil. They really don't. So that's the theory. I'm not going to pot it tight, I'm not going to jam it in because it's going to get staked. So that is relatively loosely potted. Just make sure it's settled. And the new growths are this side where there's plenty of room for them to go. And the fact that the pot is a little larger than I would like, I've made it shallower. So we'll see how it gets on. It's a new idea. Now, am I going to be able to tie both of those? Yes. If I put a stake down in there, I just want to hold it steady. I just want to stop it wobbling. Then any little new roots that come off of these new growths don't get wobbled around every time I pick the pot up. It's just not worth the risk for the sake of a stake. Keep your plants still when you repot them. It's the worst time for root tips breaking off, is that point. Now I'm going to do this again because somebody specifically asked what is the knot I use to put round a cane. And looking on the internet, I believe it's called a clove hitch. But the way you'll see it tied in the demonstrations is not the way I do it. And the reason it's different is that they start by putting it round the pole or the post and then do the knot. Now, if you can't get over the top of your pole, then you have no choice, but I can. So make a loop that way, yeah? So that the bit you've just made the loop with is on the top. Then do it again. Do another loop exactly the same, yeah? The loose end is still on the top. Pass the second loop under the first loop and you can see the knot forming already. And then put that over the top of your stake. Get it down to roughly where you want it. And gently pull the ends and it self-ties the knot. That's it. But apparently it's called a clove hitch. I didn't know that. I don't need to know what it's called. I just need to know how to do it and the fact that it works for staking. And then I'm just going to pass these two round the back, cross them over. This is a gentle tie. Nothing's getting garroted. Nothing's getting cut off at the base. It's just getting held steady. That's all it needs. And then another tip, if you tie a normal knot like that, now in this stuff that's fine, but you notice often when you pull that tight, as you move it starts to come undone. Well, if you don't want it to come undone, go round again. That'll never move, yeah, even in fishing line, yeah. It's unnecessary with raffia because it holds itself. So that's that one done. Come on, who's nicked the scissors? Ah, there we go. Don't like loose ends, make the plant look untidy. And as before, everything on that stake above that tie serves no purpose. So it's coming off. Don't use blunt blades. It's just been sharpened. Blunt blades are dangerous. They cause things to slip, especially knives. How many times have I watched somebody do an unboxing video with a really sharp knife going like this towards them? If that slips, well, think about it. Cut away. Always push a knife away from you. Okay, that's that one done. Let's have a look at what else I'm going to do. Okay, this is the third one. This is the Peter Comp. And again, look, it's virtually two plants. I'm not sure whether there's a rhizome in there or just roots joining it together. But it's going to stay as is. It's got a new growth that end and a new growth that end, which basically means it's going to have to go in the middle of the pot. Again, no moss. I've put some chunky bark in the bottom to let the air through the air cone pot, but this has got a bigger root system. And I've left some of the dead ones on there simply because it's just getting too fiddly to try and trim every root off. You know, there's always going to be a bit of decay in a pot, and I'm sort of thinking I'm damaging my plant here for the sake of taking a few dead roots off and leaving only live ones. Now this one's got a bigger root system and the roots are thicker. So this is a mixture of small and medium bark. Yeah? I don't want air holes to the best of my ability this time round. I do want all the roots in the media. I don't want great gaps. As I say, some plants like a Cattleya, if there's gaps, well, it's all the better, quite honestly. You know, their roots like a lot of air around them. But, you know, the Oncidium Alliance, they like some air around their roots, but they don't want great voids in the media, which they grow into and then dry out, you know, totally dry out, which is not good. So you're going to try and make sure all your little air pockets are gone without breaking all the roots off by punching your great fist down there. It is a gentle thing, and it's a teasing thing. You just do it gently, pushing a little bit at a time and just watching the little gaps disappear as you do it. Now, where are we with that new growth? Just sitting on the base there. Where's the other one? Yeah, the other one's just on the base. What that needs doing is a little bit of chunkier bark down behind that pseudobulb to push it up, but it's going to get tied like that anyway. So that's good. That's both new growths safely sitting on the media, not buried in it. All the roots are in something, and that's quite honestly, that doesn't need staking. That's fine as is. So that's that one done. That's the Peter Comp Miltonidium. Don't forget your tag. Okay, that's that one done. Now left the worst one till last, this Psychopsis. I'll be back. Okay, last one then, and there really is not a lot left of this. The underside of this was just had it, so virtually all the roots have been taken off. There's so little left. I've got the worst of that moss ball out. There's still some remnants in there, but there's also some roots in amongst it. I don't want to go too mad. So this plant's only hope is that these very few roots on this previous growth can hang on while this new growth pushes out some new roots. Otherwise, quite honestly, it's doomed. But I will see what I can do. Now I'm going to repot this differently to anything I've ever done before. Because the base of that plant has no viable roots, and it's highly likely that these old bulbs will never produce new roots. However, new growths on this, they seem to come out from wherever they like. They're not necessarily alongside the last growth. So in theory, a new growth could pop up wherever it sees fit, at which point roots could push out. But in the meantime, that is large, chunky, airy bark, and I'm going to sit the plant on it. It's not getting potted in anything. It's just going to be sat on the top. And then all I'm going to do is where there are some roots, I'm just going to put some media. So the only media that this plant's going to get is where there are roots. Yeah, the base of the plant is sitting on nothing. If such time comes that I see new roots pushing out, it can come out of this pot and be potted better. But I need to see those new roots. I don't hold out a lot of hope, but we will see what we can do. So the only media has just gone round that side of the plant. That's it. That's all it's going to get. It's just going to sit on the top so that the base of the plant doesn't stay wet and doesn't get rotten or anything like that. So these pseudobulbs over here have got nothing underneath them. They're just sitting on large chunky bark. It's even going to sit there on its own at the moment. There's just enough roots in there to hold that still, but nonetheless it's going to have to be staked. If there are going to be any new roots, they've got to be firm. And I know it might sound strange, but the best thing to stake on these types of plants is the actual flower spike, because they are so strong. That's if it doesn't fall over before I get to it. Okay, I've only got one stake at the moment, and I'm just going to push that in like that. And if you can just sit there long enough for me to get a clip, that would be nice. and then I'm just going to clip the flower spike onto there. Yeah, I ought to do the other one too because it is still moving. I'll come back when I've cleaned up another stake. I only had that one. Sorry about that, I needed to clean the stake off before I used it, and that's give it a good wash and hydrogen peroxide and all that stuff, so I know that the stake that's gone in the media is clean. You know, if you're going to do clean things, then you need to do clean things with everything. I'm not explaining that again, you should have got the hang of that by now. Okay, and the idea of putting the stake around the back here is that I'm actually going to tie both of these pseudobulbs and their leaves to that stake, and that should hold an awful lot of the plant still in one go. That's my theory. Okay, that should give it a chance to grow some new roots. I don't quite honestly hold out a lot of hope for this. You know, I'll do some updates if there's any worth doing, and if it has ceased to be in the future, then I'll mention it in a video, but we'll see how we do. That's the best I can do for that little thing, and that's all my own fault for not repotting it properly when I got it and just letting it sit there over that amount of time. I got that about a year ago. It's either 1 year ago or worse still 2 years ago, but I got it at an RHS show, which means it was around April time. Yeah, it's coming up to 2 years. It's been in that media and it didn't get potted properly in the first place, so if that's gone down, that's my own flipping fault. But that's the best I can do. And that's the label actually says Psychopsis Mendenhall, but the tag that it came with had the word Hildos in it, and I've seen that tagged as Psychopsis Hildos type Mendenhall. I've also seen it Psychopsis Mendenhall type Hildos. Now I believe Hildos is a genuine type of Psychopsis, so this should say Psychopsis Hildos, the actual type, and variety Mendenhall, which I think goes back to the name that Carter and Holmes gave their orchids. I think it was something to do with where they first set up their nursery. Yeah, get some history as well. It's probably all wrong. Anyway, that's it. That's the best I can do for that little beastie, and we'll see how it goes. But it's not a difficult one to replace. If I do lose it, it's all my own fault. I'll have to carry the can for that. And all I can do is hope that this little new growth round here pushes out a reasonable root system, and in the meantime the plant can support itself from the nutrients and energy that it's got stored in those bulbs, bearing in mind these leaves can still photosynthesize and put energy into the main body of the plant, which the new growth and possibly the bulb behind it can use to make roots. That's my theory, what I have. Okay, thanks for dropping by. Hope you've enjoyed this. That was quite a variety of different types, and updates to follow. We'll see how they do. Thanks for dropping by. See you next time.